Hi, I'm Elise Winters, and I'm a violin teacher in Austin, Texas, where I teach with several colleagues in a Suzuki studio. I've been teaching for more than 20 years, and every year, scheduling takes endless numbers of hours and makes my brain hurt. Until a few years ago, I was a solo teacher, and every August I had families email me their weekly schedule for the coming year and preferred lesson times. Transferring all of those emails and text messages into a new document was a bit tedious, and then I had to edit parents' long responses into something more concise and search through piles of emails to figure out which parents hadn't responded yet. Once the information is finally gathered all in one place, it takes a special kind of genius to create the jigsaw puzzle that will fit everyone into the weekly schedule with lesson times that work for them. The whole process often took the better part of a week. A couple of years ago, my colleague and I began using Google Sheets to allow families to enter their responses directly into the same document. That was a game changer. It saved us the step of transferring and sorting all of that information and works really well for simple events such as recitals where families are merely indicating their availability for a given date out of a limited selection. However, for the complexity of scheduling 20 or 30 or 40 students into a weekly schedule, the resulting document was still very lengthy and complex and difficult to take in at a glance. This past year, we landed on kind of a miracle solution using Google Forms that allows us to create cleaner data that we can easily sort and manipulate to see that elusive jigsaw puzzle more easily and create a workable schedule. Families have loved this system because all they have to do is check some boxes and jot down some quick notes, and they're done. They can go back and change their responses later if they need to. We love it because we can easily see who has and has not responded, sort the data by teacher, and also see families' availability in a clear and intuitive way. Creating the form doesn't take very long and saves us hours of work. Once created, that form can be copied and reused year after year. So let's get into the details. So this is our sign-up form for fall lessons. This is what the form that we send out to families so that they can let us know when their best availability is and what their preferred lesson time is. And this is just a simple form, but the magic happens in the back end on the form results, where we're able to do some little customizations that really allow us to visually see what families' availability is on a particular day and arrange things so that we can very easily create our fall schedule. So just a moment looking at the form, and then we'll go to the back end. 3 options on the form. Number 1, yes, this day works well. Number 2, yes, with reservations. This day wouldn't be ideal, but we can make it work. And then number 3, no, we're not able to make this day work. So you'll see they enter their name, they select their teacher. There's an option for undecided for new families. And then they can list those options 1, 2, and 3 by day of the week. Now there's going to be a little bit more detail later in the form, but this is just the kind of like initial filter that their information is passing through. So yes, maybe, and no for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Notice that we've got a note on Friday that says that this advanced group class is meeting on Friday, so that's just reminding them so that they don't double book themselves by accident. We do have some teachers who teach on Saturdays. And then here's where the families can enter their more expansive availability down at the bottom. And so that's kind of some long form information that's going to kind of go in its own area on our table. And we put that in its own area so that it still gives us the ability to sort the data on those simple answers from the top of the table. So what we want to do now is enter some dummy data so that we actually can see what the back end is going to look like. And to do that, first I need to actually publish the form. So I'm going to hit this little send sign and click publish. There also might just be a publish button up at the top depending on how wide your screen is. So now the form is published, and now I can share the link. So I'm going to go up here to the little person with the plus sign, copy responder link, and then I'm going to enter that into a new tab. And this is the form. It is now published and live on the web. And in a moment, I'm going to enter more dummy data into the form so that you can see what we can do with it. But for the moment, I want to show you how to get into the back end. So there's 3 tabs across the top here. Questions is the tab we're currently in. I'm going to click to the Responses tab. I've already entered one dummy response in here for Cheryl Sandberg. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little icon that says Link to Sheets. It's going to prompt me to create a new spreadsheet. I want to choose that option. And it's going to take me to this brand new spreadsheet, which is going to house all of my data. And this is going to be the thing that I'm going to use for sorting. So I've now just taken the past few minutes to fill in some dummy data into the spreadsheet. And you won't see it up in the responses because I filled it directly into the spreadsheet. So it says that there's only one response. But if you go over here to the spreadsheet, there's now a bunch of data there. And I'm going to make that a little wider so we can see more. And the first thing that I'm going to do before I really begin manipulating the data is I want to make the column, the spreadsheet a little more compact and easy to see at a glance. So these email addresses, I don't need to see because I already have the student names here. So I'm going to click that whole column. I'm going to click the column label up at the top, right click, and then hide column. So that now that's gone. For this first column, I don't really need to know when they entered that response. So I'm going to use this top tab label, drag that closed so that it's as narrow as it can be. If I want to see when they entered their response, I can still click that cell and the cell value still shows up here. It's not gone. All right, now for student, I'm going to reduce the size of this one. And for teacher, I'm going to go ahead and double click inside this cell and just write teacher up here. So I can retitle any of these cell headers to be shorter than what was originally on the spreadsheet. And now a fancy trick for all of these days of the week, I'm going to use my shift button. I already clicked the first one. I'm going to hold down shift and click the last day of the week here. And then I'm going to drag this column K smaller. And what you're going to see is all of the columns are going to resize to the same size that I changed column K. Boom. So that's very convenient. Now there's one small problem, which is I lost the days of the week. So I need to open it up a little bit more. And now those reappeared. You could also abbreviate these if you wanted to be obsessive about it, which usually would be me, but I won't do it right now. This column, when is the earliest time that would work for you on a weekday? I'm going to retitle that to simply the word earliest so that I know what that column is. And I'll resize that a little bit. And then weekday schedule, specific availability, I'll retitle that to specific. So you can see I'm retitling these columns, and that's not going to mess up the original form. Just because I retitle it in the spreadsheet, it doesn't impact back to the form that your families are entering data. And it'll keep those new titles while families continue to enter data in. And I now have something that's pretty workable. This specific availability, you can see it's cutting off some of these very long responses. So I might bring this down to a smaller size because I'm probably going to have to click on this cell anyway to see what that long response was. So I can see enough to get started, and if I want to know more, I just click on that cell. So now we're actually at the really fun part. Here's where the magic happens. We want to basically generate a heat map of students' availability, something that we can really very easily see visually. And we're going to use a fun feature called conditional formatting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of the rows that have students' availability. Now, in my original form, I used a 1 to mean yes. A 2 was a we can be available if necessary, so it's kind of a maybe. And then my 3s were my no's. We are not available. That day will not work for us. So you see all those 1s, 2s, and 3s in the table. By the way, you could have used yes, maybe, and no. And I chose to go 1, 2, and 3 just because that language is a little bit more neutral, and I kind of explain up at the top what each of those designations mean. But you could do whatever, and it will work in this step that we're about to do. So I'm going to highlight all of those columns, and I'm going to highlight the full column, not just the data, but that entire column all the way down to the very bottom of the table. And the reason that's important is because you want any new data that comes in to have this same formatting that we're about to apply. So I've now highlighted columns E through K. I'm going to go up to the Format menu, and I'm going to come down to Conditional Formatting. And what that's going to do is it's going to selectively highlight the cells that have whatever characteristic I specify. So the characteristic that I'm going to specify is all of the ones. So I'm going to come over here to this bar on the side, and I want to select the text that is exactly the value 1. And you'll see now all of those ones are highlighted in green. I'm going to add another rule while those columns are still highlighted. I'm going to add my maybes. So the text is exactly 2. And those are going to need to be another color because I want to distinguish them from the ones. I'm going to choose this kind of medium yellow color that stands out very nicely. And my last rule that I'm going to add is for my nose. And I'm going to choose kind of a medium red for that color because I want it to kind of recede into the background. Let's see if that one works out. And here I have a heat map. The 1s and the 2s are really jumping forward, and the 3s are kind of invisible because those are off limits anyway, so it allows me to really see what's going on in the data. Now, right now, the responses are really pretty random. It's just in the order that families entered their responses, and my next step is going to be to organize it by teacher, and that's super simple. This is already done for me by the original form. I can click this down arrow on the teacher and sort column A to Z, and it is now arranged by teacher. I can highlight Anita's students. You can see Anita's pretty well allocated among days of the week. Daria only has 1 student. We won't click on her, but Merlin has a bunch of students. I can see all of those rows, and as I do my scheduling, I can click into any of the individual details of those scheduling constraints to make sure that I observe those families' specific requests. So that is how we do scheduling in our studio. The forms go out to the families. They fill in all the responses. That initial filter of yes, no, and maybe, the days of the week, allows us to kind of like real quick organize the data, and then we can go in with those lesson times in a more granular way as needed once we're kind of getting the detailed schedule for each of those days. So I hope that that system may be useful to you as you do your fall scheduling. Enjoy.